Hi guys. So the budget. We've had a
The
couple of
budget.
days to kind of mull it over, and I think it's a good time to talk through some of the big changes and what they mean. But first, what did you both actually think of it?
I'll give you my untechnical review of it. I think because I'll let Adam talk about the details, but for me it was okay. I think there was an element of some of the things weren't as bad as what we originally thought. I think they've obviously put out and released and leaked certain things to make us think it was going to be a lot worse. So when it actually comes to it, it's better than, everyone says, oh, it's not as bad as we thought. However, they have sort of glamorized a lot of things. For example, only a 1.2% increase on NI isn't really a 1.2 increase on NI. It's, more than, I think we said that it was 9%. It's going to cost businesses a lot of money. And I think there's elements of it that will have a real negative impact on the economy. But what do I know? Like there's far more intelligent economists than myself. But from what I've been reading over the last sort of 24 hours, I've read that it's had some of the things have had a real negative impact already. And some people are even saying, I don't know how true it is, that it kind of isn't far away or even worse than what happened with Liz Truss when she announced her budget. So um, I don't know. I think that it's kind of, I think it's going to cost a lot of people money. I think that it's going to cost it could have a negative impact on sort of staffing, jobs, interest rates and things like that. Um, but there's certain things in there like freezing corporation tax and things like that and also R&D, which is also a good thing. Um, but yeah, ultimately they've turned around and said they're pushing growth, and their best part of it was that they are, what was it, a penny of every pint that or something
Yeah.
like
They were
that.
cheering
And
that one, didn't they? They were like that
yeah,
one.
met
Yeah,
by
they
loads of
like
cheers
that.
from people in Parliament. But other than that, I think it is what it is really. I don't think it's great.
And Adam?
I think it was wrapped up to look very nice, and they very much wrapped it up to kind of act like we're not raising the taxes for the working man. But you scratch a little deeper and you get under the surface, and there's a lot of stealth taxes there, and there's a lot of sort of just outright in your face taxes, which just people I just don't think the normal average working man would think about. They changed a few things with inheritance tax, and when you just look at it on the face of it, and they haven't changed the tax rate or they haven't changed the allowances. Okay, that's great, but no, you start looking under the surface and what they did actually change, and they're big things that they've changed. They're going to have big impacts on a lot of people. I know the farmers up and down the land are kicking off right now about some of the things they've changed for it. Um, the same with the national insurance. I think they focused a lot on that they increased the employer's allowance. But in the grand scheme of things, yes, that is great. By the way, the fact that they've raised that is great for the smaller employers, the one-man bands and stuff like that. But for the medium to large corporations, it's barely going to scratch the surface. It's not really going to do much. Um, so I think they spent a lot of time wrapping this up to make it look like this great budget. In reality, it wasn't.
Yeah. And so in terms of, obviously you've just briefly mentioned the employer's allowance, stuff like that. What
Mhm.
do you both think have been the most significant updates from this budget that I guess general UK SMEs should know about?
Well, no,
My
Adam, I'll let you
opinion,
answer that.
that's the two main things is the employers. I think everyone's talking about the increase of the employers, and that's going to be a big hit on employers. Looking at sort of specific trade, recruitment trade, for example, not only is that going to hit them personally for their business, their every day-to-day running, it's going to affect their trade. Less people are going to be kind of employing anyone, and the wages that they are going to be given are probably going to be capped somewhat now, because to incorporate this now increased cost that they've got to pay for. Recruitment companies have they've got other things going on as well that came out in the budget, which I don't think a lot of people have spoken about, which is they have to now start basically accounting for the PAYE for staff. I'll be honest, I haven't got every single detail on it yet, so I can't go into too much detail, but there's a lot of changes for the recruitment sector, not just the employment raise. Outside of that, inheritance tax, like I said before, to me, I spend a lot of time doing inheritance tax, so maybe I'm a bit biased, but the fact that they've brought that pensions are now going to be included from April 27, that is a big change. That's a big change. For years, and especially the last couple of years since they've got rid of the lifetime allowance, people have been using pensions, completely legit, been using pensions as a estate planning tool, and kind of put cash in there, commercial properties in there. Now, all sorts have been going into pensions. Now, essentially, everything you've done that involves a pension is now irrelevant, and it's like you haven't done anything. And to now get all that stuff out of the pensions could have tax consequences in itself. So I think there's a lot of people that are going to be in a situation where it's either you've got to leave it in the pension and now pay the inheritance tax on that, or start getting that out of the pension and potentially have tax consequences now. I'm sure people probably ended up paying tax getting it into pensions. So now that was a pointless transaction. It's a big change, and it's going to affect a lot of people. I mentioned farmers a minute ago. The agriculture allowance for inheritance tax is capped at $1 million now. Majority of farmland and stuff like that, the land itself is over that. And I was watching something on the news yesterday, and it was the vice president of the Farmers Association. Apologies if I've got that wrong, but she was essentially saying that their statistic of it being this is only going to affect 3/4 of farms. Sorry, this is not going to affect 3/4 of farms. It's just wrong, because what she's including there is new farms, and for farms to be viable, they have to grow, they have to get more land, they have to become bigger. So all these farms that she's including in this statistic is, in a year's time, are no longer going to be in that statistic, because they're going to have grown and become bigger. So I know that's affected a lot of farmers in particular, but across the board, it's going to affect everyone. Anyone with a sort of medium to large business, usually your business value would not have been included. Now it's capped at £1 million. Given these days, £1 million doesn't go far for a valuation for a medium to large business. Them, for me, they were the biggest changes for me. Obviously, there's lots of other changes, but they were the biggest changes.
And obviously, we mentioned earlier how it seems like they've wrapped this budget up with a bow, and they obviously did announce a huge investment going into the agriculture sector through innovation and that sort of thing. So it's funny, because obviously this is going to have a massive negative impact, but it seems like they've tried to throw positive things in there to make people feel like it's not as bad as it is, which I think is what we're seeing in a lot of kind of the posts online that are expressing relief.
It's the biggest shit sandwich I've ever seen. It literally
well, yeah, exactly, to put it bluntly. Yeah. So
we've got to put a PG rating on the webinar now.
Yeah, I'll put it. Don't worry, I'll put not for children when I upload.
I think for me right now, just to follow up, I think the most important thing for business owners is they tidy up their forecasts. That is the most important thing. I think with all the, it is going to cost. I think also people also have to remember that, stamp duty with a lot of landlords don't just own one property, right? They own two. So with the stamp duty, everything, stamp duty and what they're trying to do with the property sector and things like that, it's only going to increase rent. I spoke to someone yesterday who called me in a panic because their landlord put up their rent by £1,000 a month. £1,000 just like that, because of everything. I don't know the full story, but it's going to create a huge sort of movement in the market with, and people are going to have to earn more, but employers aren't going to be able to pay more because, effectively it's I think did I share with you actually there was a post or a video by the CEO of Brewdog, who said, or was it Brewdog? It might not have been Brewdog. It was someone who said that it's going to cost them £80,000 additional. Was it Brewdog?
Yeah, I think it was.
£80,000 additional amount. That's 2 or 3 salaries.
Yeah.
That's 2 or 3 salaries. And, I think so from a business owner's perspective, I think people have to look at their forecasts now more than ever. And I think now's the perfect time to do it because most of the changes will come from April. I think apart from the stamp duty one, which, she turned around and said from the next day, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Today, yeah.
So that means that anyone that was in the process,
from yesterday, yeah.
Yeah, anyone in the process of, I felt sorry for anyone in the process of doing something there and then. Their stamp duty bill's just gone up by a couple of percent.
Yes,
but anyway,
I said this yesterday, didn't I? If you're buying a property for £500,000, 10 grand you got fined all of a sudden,
just out of nowhere. So without warning. So what I guess from now's the perfect time, Peter. What I would say that business owners now need to look at their forecasts for next sort of April onwards now. And really factor in those changes and really focus on sort of how to streamline their business even more so than ever. Yeah. Because, ultimately it's going to be, people aren't going to be able, businesses aren't going to have to, aren't going to be able to afford, or certain amounts of national insurance if it does affect them. So, yeah. So that's where I'll go with it. I think the 2 most important things right now are actually really delving into the forecasting of the next financial year.
And I guess so obviously with the national living wage increasing, I think it went up to £12.21.
Yeah.
It's interesting because obviously SMEs are going to have to manage rising payroll expenses. And so what you're saying, Mitch, I assume having those clear forecasts and understanding how to manage your money, that would help them plan for that big change, which I think is coming in. Is it April 20? It's April 25.
April 25.
So
yeah.
how can business owners plan for that? Because that is going to have huge impact. And what might the knock-on effect be with the obviously national living wage going up to that level? Do you think there'll be a shift to more outsourcing? And do you think there's going to be redundancy? What's going to happen?
Yeah. I think firstly, I think what you'll find is a lot of people are going to put their prices up for whatever they do, that's probably the first place to start, right? Which is going to cause inflation, right? It's going to be a whole big, anyway, but yeah, I think that people need to either speak to their accountant or look at their forecasts that they've already created. And it's actually quite insane how many people I speak to sort of that don't work with us, potential new clients. And one in particular, not so long ago, huge business actually, haven't got forecasts. And I couldn't believe it. And I was like, so what do you do if there's any changes? We've literally got a budget coming up where they've leaked all the information. What do you do with regards to that? And they're like, well, we just trade. And I mean, this is like a 20-30 million pound business. So it's quite mad. But no, they need to people need to look at their forecasts, and from the forecast you can create like almost what if scenarios. So look at the different sort of scenarios where, okay, maybe we need to increase our prices, maybe we need to reduce costs here, maybe. So really go through that exercise with their forecasts for the next financial year. And yeah, the impact it can have is, like I said, if people start putting up their prices, which they got, it already happened with when the cost of living sort of came about. Everyone started having to earn more, so everyone had to increase their prices of product or service. So therefore there was this whole big price increase throughout the whole, we were getting it, all our suppliers were sending us emails being like, our fees are going up, it happened. That could happen again potentially to cover the costs of these huge companies that control the markets, really have thousands and thousands of members of staff. It's going to cost them. I can't imagine. Adam, can you imagine what it's going to cost them in employers and I?
So I worked it out. I did a very rough calculation yesterday. If we're looking like at a company who's got 50 employees, average of 30 grand across them employees, it's going to cost them about 50 grand extra a year. That's 2 salaries almost.
Yeah.
In my mind, I think the problem's going to come when two ways. Like you said, bitch, I completely agree. Cost of living. I think cost of living is going to get worse. This whole thing was wrapped up to be beneficial for the working man. It's not. It's going to hit our pocket at the end of the day. Of course it is.
Always does.
The other thing is pay rises and layoffs. Like I just, I just think employers are now going to be kind of careful what they do, and in some respects, rightly so. It's of course you've got to be careful. All of a sudden, you've got an extra, X percentage, X amount of pounds that you've got to pay to give your employee more money. So it's not necessarily a case of they don't want to. Some people are not going to be able to.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to hit the economy a lot harder than they think it is.
Yeah.
The
other thing is capital gains as well, isn't it? As well, we haven't mentioned that yet.
That's
We've
what
not
I was going
mentioned
to
that
say.
yet.
With changing, obviously, capital gains, what is actually changing and how might it impact? Is it going to impact property? Is it going to impact construction? Who's it going to actually impact with these changes?
Well, it's going to impact anyone who's selling it. Oh, Adam, do you know what? I'm going to let you go through this.
Go on. So a lot of people are going to sit there and go, it could have been worse. I think before the budget, there was a lot going around of going, it's going to go up to 20%, it's going to go up to 40%, and now it's only gone up to 18 and 24%. So I think there's a lot of people going, it could have been worse, and they've done nothing with properties. So like we've come off all right. But if you actually look at the figures behind it and the maths behind it, for the basic rate, that's an 80% increase in capital gains tax they've just given you. It's still a dramatically big increase that they've put on there. And like anyone who's selling basically anyone who's selling anything other than a residential property, shares, commercial properties, investments, carried interest is a whole different thing because that's gone up to 32% now. Well, now it will do. So there's a big increase, and once again, I think it's probably slightly on purpose before the budget that they gave this whole it could go up to 20 and 40%. So now everyone's going, it's not as bad as we thought it was going to be. It's still bad. I think a lot of people, you've got to realise it's still bad. It's not good. Entrepreneurs relief has also gone up. Entrepreneurs relief was obviously 10%, flat rate 10% up to the first million. Now that's, it still falls in line with the basic rate, but that's now 18% as well. So anyone who's looking to get out of a business and sell their business or business assets, once again, extra 80% coming out of that, extra 80% on top of that tax figure.
Yeah.
So like big changes in capital gains.
It for me, look, I think without trying to be political, they've obviously come out and said that there's a huge sort of gap with regards to money that the country needs to find. But
what did they say? It was a 22 billion pound hole. Like
they needed to find, yeah. But I think the tax increase was like, didn't it work out? I think I read it was 44 billion.
Yeah.
I think anyway. But there's obviously a huge need for it. But I think that to come out and say that it's quite a growth focused budget is completely. I don't believe that's correct. I think it's going to have the opposite impact. However, it just depends how long it lasts for. So these things could change depending on how things work moving forward. I mean, I'm not a politician. I don't understand politics as much as I'd probably like to. But, if they did come out and said that businesses would pay the price and businesses are going to pay the price. But to say that it's a growth focused budget, I don't think that's fair. Yeah.
And just something we've not covered yet, but I know that we've been getting a lot of calls at Norden's about this already. So the abolishment of the non-dom tax regime.
I've been driving Adam mad about this one.
Yeah, what does that actually mean, I guess, and particularly for sectors who work with maybe international talent or whatever, like what does it actually mean?
But have they released a small print on it yet? I don't think they have.
They haven't released the small print. So they've said obviously non-dom is going to be scrapped as of April 25, but they're going to introduce a new residency status scheme. I can't remember exactly what they called it. What that scheme is, I don't know. I imagine it's going to be some kind of evolution of the current residency scheme. What exactly it's going to be, though, no idea at this minute.
So I think just summarize what non-dom is, if you can, and then what they've scrapped and how it's going to impact people that are non-dom and what that means for. Yeah, that would be good.
So up until now, say up until end of end of April now, start of April. If you're non-dom, basically means that you don't pay your worldwide taxes within the UK. So, if you've got millions of pounds sitting in Dubai or wherever it may be, you're not going to pay it in the UK. HMRC are changing that. So as of April 25, non-dom doesn't exist anymore. If you live in the UK, you pay your taxes here on your worldwide income. So if you've got, money sitting elsewhere or businesses elsewhere, you pay your tax here, which some people, will probably sit there and say, well, good. What my fear is that the people this is going to affect are the people who've got the money to go elsewhere. And I think you're going to see a lot of issues of investors in this country, people who've come and lived in this country and probably spend a lot of money in this country, helping our economy boost and stuff like that. And they're all going to start moving out of the country and going to places like Dubai or elsewhere, where the taxes are, either zero or less than ours. I don't think they've properly thought it through. And I think there's just going to be a lot of people sort of getting up and moving.
Interesting. I mean, it will be interesting to see what that small print actually says when it all comes out. And then we can obviously release further updates and guidance on what that actually means for people and our suspicions of what might happen at the back of it. But it's definitely something that I think I'm not seeing that many people talking about yet, perhaps because there isn't enough information, but I think it's something that we all should be thinking about. They obviously did announce some positives. So they're putting, I think they said, a £5 billion investment into affordable housing, which is going to have a good impact on construction and property in some respects. There's positives for R&D. I know they're doing particular sort of grants and things like that. So I guess there were some positive things. There was also the electric vehicle incentives. What's going on with that? Do you think that will make the world more sustainable? Is it a big impact, or is it something they threw in just to chuck another little positive thing in there to make it feel good?
I mean, I think that one was coming kind of regardless. Obviously, the government are very kind of wanting to push electric vehicles, which, I don't necessarily disagree with. No, I think it's a good idea. Yeah. But what the route they've gone for is, rather than making electric vehicles more or kind of more tax friendly, they've made everything else worse. So rather than so once again, this kind of goes back to like the what I was saying about the stealth taxes. All they've done is increase. They've not brought taxes down; they've increased taxes. So yes, that does kind of what they want it to do, and to make electric cars look better for people. But electric cars are not actually any better for people. Everything else is just worse. If you look at the electric cars on their own and forget everything else, they're no better. Don't get me wrong, still good, but not better than that.
It's still beneficial though to put an electric car through a business. It's still
absolutely, yeah. This is what I'm saying. It's still a million times more beneficial. So yeah, absolutely go that route. But they've once again wrapped it up to make it look like they're doing all this stuff, but they're not.
I guess it's good for, say, a construction company, if they want to put their whole fleet into like electric vans or something like that, then there are benefits for businesses like that. Is there anything that you feel like we've not touched on in this chat that you want to sort of speak more on?
I just want to reiterate that if anyone is watching this and has got this far, I think the two things to do are forecasts and streamline. I think forecasting, any business owners watching this, I think forecasting is probably the biggest thing to do right now. Whenever there's changes or whenever there's, future changes, it's get your forecasts up to date, get your cash flow forecasts up to date, so you can prepare for any changes that's happening, whether they affect, and see how much they affect you, and you can adjust accordingly and work out the next steps. Yeah, and I think off the back of doing forecasts and having clear forecasts, you can really start to plan and work out what to do, i.e., investment into streamlining. AI is a big thing. They actually mentioned loads about AI, didn't they? Saying that we're going to be the AI this and AI that. But AI, how can you use AI to streamline? And is there cash there to be able to invest into that? things like sorry, someone's just walked past and left. I did tell him to stay put whilst on this call. But yeah, and also price increases and how it's gonna impact that. But I think it's so important. That is, for me, is the most important thing right now for all business owners.
And then I guess, Adam, for you, it'd be the tax planning side of things. So I
Tax
imagine
planning,
proactive
yeah.
tax planning at this point is going to be one of the biggest things, especially for the IHT staff and everything that you've mentioned. I guess that sitting down with a tax specialist and actually going through your tax plan.
Yeah, people need to absolutely, just need to look at their position as a whole, kind of almost go back to step one, and any kind of tax planning, estate planning mainly, you've done over the last X amount of years, just revisit it. It might be absolutely fine still. I don't want everyone to panic all of a sudden thinking, but just revisit it and make sure it's okay still.
Perfect. Okay, guys, thank you both. Obviously, for those
Well, I
who
will
don't
say
know,
as well, just to, if anyone has questions about what's happened, reach out and we'll answer them as best as we can for them and help them where we can.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And for those who don't know, you've got Adam here. He's our senior tax manager, and Mitch here, who's our CEO. I'm Ashley. I'm CMO here at Nordens, and we're here to help. Thanks, guys.